Imagine having the chance to meet a living creature from the biblical times. Well, it turns out there actually may be a way, because a flock of holy sheep have just made it back to the Holy Land, and I got the chance to meet them firsthand.
The other night I wanted to make a bonfire, so we have a special fire pit, and I found a couple of bushes, and so I wanted to start the fire with these bushes on the wood. And when I came back to light it, the bushes were gone. They ate it. So I said, oh, who's the Moses who ate my burning
who's
bushes?
eating the burning bush?
You may have never heard of them, but the sheep behind me are a pretty big deal across borders. They're called Jacob's sheep, and their lineage traces back to biblical times. The sacred flock appears in the book of Genesis in the Old Testament, where they were given to Jacob by his father-in-law as wages. Their wool was even used to make Joseph's famous multicolored coat.
These sheep are the only breed in the world that have the description of the Bible on them. They have the spots and speckles, and ankle bands, and in the prophet Ezekiel, horns of the original biblical sheep. Some studies have shown that they are a very old world breed of sheep that did come from the Middle East about 4,000 years ago.
Meet Gil and Jenna Lewinsky. This Israeli-South African couple have spent the last 2 years of their life on a special mission to bring the Jacob sheep back to the Holy Land from Canada, where they've been most recently living. The Lewinskys rescued the sheep after they were almost thrown out of a heritage farm, after realizing how very special their background was.
Why would the Bible have a full chapter in Genesis dedicated to how Jacob got his flock and his description and everything? They don't have a purpose. Obviously they have a purpose.
They even claim that Jacob's sheep are similar to the Jewish people.
And also there is a curious, I don't think it's a coincidence, but they're the only other major mammal to have Tay-Sachs disease, which is a disease that affects Ashkenazi Jewry.
No matter how similar they may be, it certainly hasn't been an easy process to bring the Jacob sheep over to the Jewish state. For the last 2 years, the Lewinskys have been engaged in a series of high-level negotiations with the Israeli and Canadian foreign ministries to bring the flock over to Israel.
They're sort of like the national animal, the sheep. So that's something we'd like to re-establish in Israel. We want the sheep to have conservation status, so that they won't be used for milk or meat, and that they just be growing in their number. Because worldwide, it's a fact that they are endangered. I think this would be something nice that Israel should be known for, conserving animals.
Well, after a hard fight, the determined couple has finally had success, and the sheep are back in Israel, or should we say back? So it looks like the sheep need a little bit of bribing for a one-on-one interview, so I have some handy grain, and we're going to see if we get anybody to bite. So you guys think you're going to stick it out here in the Holy Land? No? It's a mannequin challenge, no response, but I think that looks like somewhat of a yes.
Come here, David.
I feel like we're going to need another. The dog is going to be in the shots all the time. So what do you think about... What do you think about the Holy Land, huh?
He loves it. To kiss you.
Success! Finally they love me just as much as I love them. The sheep seem to be content, but the transition hasn't exactly been easy. All 117 of them are still being quarantined before they can move to their final home, and conditions aren't perfect to say the least. Quarters are cramped, and right now the sheep have spent the past couple of weeks at a farm just a few kilometers from the Gaza border, which doesn't always feel safe.
There's always armed cobras passing like this.
Something happened, huh? But the Lewinskys seem like they can take on anything. The couple both had flourishing careers before they decided to dedicate their lives to shepherding the sheep. Gil was a journalist and Jenna worked for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. But they say the transition wasn't as hard as some might think.
But when you transition to farming, a certain joy deep in your heart comes out of it. Everything seems to connect. Shepherding is a real way of life. You know, it actually parallels this in the Tanakh, that the good leaders are good shepherds, right?
They're right. Both former President Shimon Peres and former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon once worked as shepherds themselves. Coming down to visit the Jacob sheep might actually be a good crash course on how to run the world, or at least how to keep your memory sharp. How did you come up with the names for 117 different sheep? I mean, coming up with a name for one child is hard in of itself, right?
Well, sometimes we got our inspiration from the Bible, and we also had volunteers in Canada. And the only thing we told our volunteers is they need to have Hebrew names.
So is there going to be a sheep named after me?
Is there a Hebrew version of Natasha? What does Natasha mean in Hebrew?
Yeah, there is no Hebrew version of Natasha. I guess.
We'll have to make one.
Yeah, we'll have to make one, right? So what's next for Israel's newest 117 woolly residents? They'll be heading to a farm in Nesarim, a small town near Jerusalem. Because, as the Lewinskys say, there's no better place in Israel for the sheep than the mountains of Judah, where they wandered thousands of years ago. And I have a strong feeling a lot of visitors will want to come and wander there themselves with these historic creatures. No, I'm serious when I say I'm going to be back here to visit. Made a bunch of new friends, 117 to be exact.